term you'll hear thrown around a lot in esports, and particularly in League of Legends esports as it pertains to kind of like Riot and their involvement and how things are structured in the circuit, is going to be this term sustainability. And it can be a very good term, it's an interesting concept, but it ends up being often thrown around in a way where it's very vague. It's like a nebulous term. Nobody defines what they mean by sustainable, or in what way is this thing sustainable. They just put that term out there and they go, well, we did this for long-term sustainability, and well, that thing isn't sustainable, your suggestion, and this method here is sustainable. They just keep using this fucking word over and over again. It becomes like one of those like middle management bullshit buzzwords that someone read in a fucking like Business Manager Monthly or whatever. Like it becomes something where it sounds like it means something deep, but in what way are you applying it? Now, as far as I know, when I think of the term sustainability, what I think of is, okay, can what you're doing be maintained? Is it, have you put too much into it now and you're not going to have the resources later to be able to put into it? There's an issue. Is it sustainable in that sense? Can this thing support itself? Can it like generate its own income? Can it get more money? Can it get whatever resources it needs essentially to continue on and be good, or be just continue itself? And following on from that, can it endure? Is this just a short-term thing that's going to be now, and yeah, it's cool now, but okay, what about the future? Like, was there a different route we could have gone where it wouldn't be quite as cool now, it wouldn't be quite as big, but it would last longer because it can naturally build into something, and it will gather its own momentum and resources and the people it needs, and it won't just be all blown out immediately. Now, this is a very crucial concept actually for esports, because we've seen in the past, there have been examples where a good example would probably be like the CPL World Tour in 2005, where they did this tour and they had got $1 million worth of prize money, and they went all out and they went to all these countries, like 10 stops or something, and they did spend $1 million worth of prize money. But afterwards, where was the sustainability? First of all, like I don't think it got the numbers it needed. I think the sponsors were scared off a bit because it was like too much too soon and it didn't get all the metrics maybe it needed. And so, yeah, in this sense, this is a good example of where it wasn't sustainable. Maybe you would have been better just pitching them something like a 200k circuit that was like 4 stops, and then it would kind of like build into that. And then next year we'll go to 6 stops and then 8 stops. And then eventually we'll get to the million like 4 years in, when we've shown you like what you get for 250k and then 500k. Maybe that's a better example of what sustainability could be like in esports, okay? But let's think about it within this sense, because it's often used by Riot. It's often used by people arguing on behalf of Riot who've heard similar things. So I'm going to kind of use it from mainly a League of Legends bent, even though obviously as an esports term, it has applications everywhere, and I'll bring in other esports examples. So Riot created the LCS, and you could say that this is a move towards sustainability, because in the past, one of the downsides of an open circuit is that, yeah, well, if IPL 5 just goes bust, well, there's part of the circuit gone, and does someone step into their void? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. What would that tournament be like? How much prize money would it have? Do players know in 6 months how many tournaments there's going to be and what prize money there's going to be available? And as a result, what moves can they make? It's true, there's a degree of issue here in terms of the sustainability. So, okay, you create LCS, League Championship Series, and as a result, there are set minimum salaries for players. So we know what's going on there. There's a structure to the league, you know roughly how long it lasts, and you know where everyone is within the league. And you arrive at a scenario where you might say, right, well, that's sustainable. It is in a degree, like that can be maintained. We know what it's going to require, what resources. But how does the LCS in that sense be maintained? How does it support itself, and how does it endure? Well, it supports itself because Riot, who paid the money to put this thing into place, continue to pay the money. How does it maintain itself and as well support itself? Same thing. Riot put the money in, so as a result, it keeps going. That's what supports it. It's the Riot money, which doesn't come from anything outside of esports. Comes from Riot. And then how does it endure? Well, it endures as long as Riot puts that money in. Right? That's not really fulfilling much of the sustainability, what you're thinking of there. It's not generating anything itself. It's actually not sustainable in any sense. It's as artificial. In fact, it's more artificial than those tournaments, because some of those tournaments were based off like if they got really good numbers and they had the right teams there and the popularity was there, and then it pleased the sponsor in terms of the metrics, and the sponsor was like, right, I'll invest again. That's actually more sustainable than the Riot example here of the LCS. Yeah, the sponsor can decide not to, but in the same way, if Riot doesn't get money elsewhere that has nothing to do with the esports side, then they don't have the money to put in the esports side. So when you had this open circuit, yeah, there were issues with it, but an upside of the open circuit is that there is competition. There are more tournaments. There's as much money can come into the scene as wants to. If someone's a totally different sponsor in a totally different tournament, as long as they have the initiative to want to do it, they can get involved and they can bring money into the scene. A downside of the LCS system, actually, that people don't think about is, the Riot side of it's good. I understand why they want to do their tournaments and have it this way, and if it's up to them, why they want to lock players into their system and all the rest of it. But it actually stops money, this is for real, after Season 2 and went to Season 3 where it was just LCS, it actually stops money coming into League of Legends esports. Yes, maybe in that period in time, Riot themselves were bringing in more money than would have come in, so maybe the margins add up, but it stops other money coming in that would have come in. So from sponsors, like directly, especially sponsors that would want to sponsor multiple teams and take these parts that are difficult concepts in terms of some of the ownership rules and all these sorts of things. Other tournaments would come in and they would be involved, like ESWC would have a big tournament with all the pros there. All these different orgs would be involved, and in theory it could have been bigger and more sustainable in that sense, because that's the thing. If one of those orgs drops out, well, as long as it's still a big game with lots of people watching and all the rest of it, a different org will jump in, a different sponsor will jump in. That's not the same with the Riot thing. The Riot thing, they have to keep their money coming, otherwise it's in trouble immediately. And how does it go on from there? How does it increase and support itself and grow from this sense? Because it only grows if Riot put more money in, or they get a better sponsor that goes on the side that's fulfills their terms, etc. This is actually very vague as to whether that meets the sustainability criteria. Its own scenario there, because in terms of an open circuit, one of the best examples of this is obviously in Dota 2. And CSGO to a lesser degree. So in Dota 2, everyone who's in League of Legends knows about the international. Okay, they know there's this one big event and the fans now can pay some money towards it and it gets bigger. No, that happens to a bunch of tournaments. Now they're all vetted. There's a degree to which I think Valve or someone has to agree to let you take part in it and have one of these compendiums that someone buys, and then they get the compendium, and the idea is that money goes to a prize pool and then a percentage of that goes into the tournament as prize money. So okay, that's a concept to crowdfund money in. So not only is the tournament putting it in with their money from the sponsors, and Valve themselves aren't putting the money in there, but the tournament's putting the money in, and these are for all the tournaments within the international, by the way. So as a result, you can choose if you want to support Starlight, if you want to support the Dota Asian Championship. So all these different tournaments, you can put in your money to support that specific tournament and make it bigger. That's actually a great sustainability idea. It's not very sustainable in as much as, in the same way as if Riot quit giving their money, if the fans don't give their money this time, then it just goes back to the old open circuit where it's now the money that comes from the sponsors. So, okay, that has its issues. But actually, in its own way, this is more sustainable because, first of all, no matter how much the sponsors put in, the fans can pump it up as much as they want. And is it sustainable in terms of growing? I don't know. Maybe you'll never get a prize push like the TI4 one again. That might be true. Maybe it'll only be 5 million this year. But it's actually more sustainable in the sense that the money, the same millions of dollars, is coming from more people. Whereas in the Riot case, even if they matched that figure, it's all coming Riot, or it's all coming from Riot and their one approved sponsor, or whatever the scenario is. So actually, it's more sustainable to have lots of people doing it, because then if one person drops out with their $10, first of all, 3 more people might join, and even if he drops out, we've still got all the $10 from a bunch of other people who will stay involved. Whereas in the Riot one, it has to be all their money, or less from them, or just none, which is a possibility as well. Much more of a case that you can get nothing from the Riot model than from the crowdsourcing model. And we've seen crowdsourcing seems to be a very good idea. It gives a lot of power to fans, crucially. They can choose what events to support. They can choose to really pump the event up if they're hyped about it. And so as a result, also benefits in terms of encouraging organisers to do things the way fans want, to make the tournament so that it's got the good teams at it, and you've really structured it in terms of a good time of year and good time you're going to show it and all the rest, and you make your compendium good. All these factors play in it. Whereas in the LCS system, if you're a fan, to a degree, you're just a consumer, you're just an idol. You sit back, LCS comes on, you don't pay for it, you don't get any say in it, you don't have any choice in it. You just have to hope the Big Daddy Riot keeps paying out the money. And as long as he does, everything's fine. But if he doesn't, even if millions watching wanted to be involved, please take my money, like that meme, they couldn't. You're locked out of that system in that way. You're not allowed in any sense. And that does seem to a degree like it's a control issue, because every time people bring up the crowdfunding issue, because if crowdfunding existed, by the way, the League of Legends World Championship last year that could have probably had 20 million or something, but they always bring up this issue, but that's not sustainable, or we have questions about the sustainability, and I've never heard it explained how their system is sustainable and how this system isn't, and what they mean by sustainability. So in CSGO, we don't have as much of an open system, as in you can't choose which tournament to support, but when you buy one of the cases, which is our equivalent of the compendium, when you buy a case, which gives you skins in-game, these cases go towards the fund for the 3 majors a year, just the big 250k majors. So again, even if you couldn't find a sponsor to put that money forwards, well, the fans love the game at the moment. They're really into the game at the moment. It shows no signs of stopping growing. So they want to put the money in. Therefore, it's We have more people sponsor. We have tons of mini sponsors, but we also get something back. So they're a mixture of a consumer and a sponsor. It's just you don't think of it that way because they're just a guy. So they get to help the tournament scene get bigger, and there's more. As a result, there's more money flowing into Dota 2. There's more money flowing into CS:GO. Whereas in League of Legends, there's money coming in from Riot quite a lot, but there's a lot of money, people who want to give them, who can't, either fans or sponsors or other tournaments or people who have different ideas for how to monetize the game, they can't get involved to the same degree. The reason I bring up the Riot issue again and again is because here's what I don't think people understand. How do you think Riot gets the money to put into LCS? Now, first and foremost, it's not from LCS. Like, what tickets are they selling lots of to Riot events and making enough to spend all the money for the salary? How much are they charging you to watch it? I mean, okay, maybe there's tickets to go to the actual live thing, but there's only a few hundred people in that studio. The whole thing costs way more than that. The salaries especially. And then in terms of watching it live on stream, well, it's free. They don't charge you to watch the stream, so you're not making any money from the viewers, not making any money from the live audience, really. Okay, what sponsorships do they have? They tend to have like one or two specially done. It's not like an old esports event where you have like the big marquee sponsor and then the 6 sponsors below that. And then since there aren't other tournaments, other sponsors can't get involved in that way. So it's just coming from this one area here. Essentially, if we boil it down, just to make it easy to understand for the layman, LCS and League of Legends esports, as far as it pertains to Riot money, is essentially just a form or a margin, not a margin, a cross-section of the Riot marketing budget. Not marketing budget for esports, marketing budget for League of Legends, the game. As in esports and LCS, League of Legends esports and LCS itself is essentially just a form of marketing to remind you that League of Legends is out there, it's a good game, it's a fun game, make you want to play, make you want to get skins, make you want to get these champions that are being seen. But it's all for the main business of Riot, which is League of Legends the game. That's where Riot makes their money. League of Legends the game, selling skins, selling champions, selling RP, whatever it is. That's where they make their money, okay? It's League of Legends the game. So that means that all this money going to the esports side is directly connected to a degree to the health of the game, the growth of the game, any kind of indirect link between the game's success, esports success and the game's success, any kind of studies that actually suggest that people are going to the game and spending more or that it's keeping it alive in all these senses. That's why it's a crucial concept to understand here, because that's not very sustainable in itself, because it's being sustained by something that actually has nothing to do with esports and isn't based on esports success. Think of it this way. You remember when Riot said those comments, like, they made a bunch of comments. I think it was in like late season 3 where they'd make comments that were along the lines of like, we actually lose money on LCS. Like League of Legends esports loses us money as Riot. Now, what was crazy about that was that to me struck me as very disingenuous, because when I've just explained that link there, that essentially LCS and League of Legends esports, especially the way they do it without letting a lot of other people get involved who know how to bring in investment money and sponsors and all that, the way that they're doing it, funding it themselves through this method, essentially as marketing budget for their own game that they're making millions off, the way that they presented what they just said there is like, we know we lose money on it, was like really kind of distasteful, because it was almost as if they were saying like, you better be grateful because, I'm spending a lot of my money and I don't get anything back for that. It's like, well, you're talking about it's a marketing budget for your thing. Think about it this way. Let me give you an analogy. You know that in sporting events, like especially like extreme sports, Red Bull sponsors lots of them, like lots of the events, and they even put on their own tournaments in StarCraft now. Let's imagine that Red Bull did that, and they were like, we put on these extreme sports events, and we don't even make money back from that. And we're doing that. We're losing money putting on those sports, and you guys don't like the way we do things. Be like, well, no, you do it as marketing for your fucking product, Red Bull, because you want people to see it and associate it with cool things and buy Red Bull and drink it. And when people buy the Red Bull, which they buy fuck tons of Red Bull, you're getting rich as fuck. Therefore, you have more money and more market budget. You put on more events. That's everyone understands the link there. So why would you even present it that way? What kind of sinister motive do you have to try and like trick the viewer, or maybe someone who doesn't understand the link in this sense, or to even have that attitude? It's kind of a gall to even be like that, to be honest. So whatever. Maybe they don't do that anymore. But the reason why I bring that up is because I don't want people to think naively that Riot's doing LCS and League of Legends esports out of the goodness of their hearts. They're just philanthropists. And, we have a successful game, but that has nothing to do with esports. And we just love League of Legends. We used to watch Hotshot GG on his stream, and we used to think like, Niddly GG, Hotshot, he's the best guy. You know what? Let's have a real esports, and let's make this a big thing, and it'll be sport. No, they're doing it for the reason I said. I'm sure there's motivations where they like it, and that's part of the reason why they want to see it grow and all the rest of it. But an underlying causal link is the money that can be made from League of Legends and its connection in that sense. And There's times where they could make more money, and I get the sense they don't because they want control over League of Legends esports, but that has nothing to do with sustainability. In fact, that's the opposite. It would be more sustainable to have more money coming in from outside, more sources, more sort of things that prop up League of Legends esports, more legs, so that if one falls out, there's still all these other ones and it stays stood up. If there's just one big leg that's right and that gets chopped or crippled at all, it's going to sink down, it's going to snap, whatever. It's going to be an issue. And if they put too much in at that point, it's going to collapse. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because if League of Legends, the game, has issues, if the way those big, huge games like League of Legends work is this a snowball effect. Yeah, you have a cool game and you market it well and you make some key decisions right along the way, but there's kind of a snowball social phenomenon event where you don't really 100% know why it's so big. Like, part of why it's big is if one person's playing it, then a friend of his says, like, oh, what games are you playing? And he says, like, League of Legends, and that friend starts playing. You can't really get to that guy. You can get to the original guy, but that's there's an extra social effect there that it's very hard to do. That's why you can't just make things viral, even though people have tried to in those early days of the internet videos, etc. So as a result, you get in this world where those games, the same way they come up overnight and no one predicted that this genre, like Dota was a game that people played just for fun and had a very small pro scene, yet tons of people were playing it, yet tons of people played League of Legends. They turned it into a big esport, they turned it into a much huger game, and they made all this money off it. Okay, great, you had like a social phenomenon there. But in the same way, tomorrow, if the next big social phenomenon comes along and it is really big and it happens to draw people away from playing League of Legends, then League of Legends can drop off in 10 million viewers, players, could drop off in 5 million players, could drop off to like half the player base very quickly. That's the way these phenomena happen. So in a world where that happens, they drop all these millions or half, then what happens to the LCS side of things? If they really were doing it like philanthropists, because then maybe they just keep paying their money. I suspect that's one of the things that would be first on the docket of like, well, we're going to have to cut some costs, so we're going to have to scale this back a little bit, or now maybe we're going to have to bring in some other aspects, crowdfunding or doing this, if they were like willing to open themselves up to suggestions. Otherwise, eventually you could get to a world where they really would just have to be like, well, we're going to have to cancel LCS. I'm sorry, like the business has had problems, stock drops, whatever the situation is there. That in itself is a sustainability concern because crucially, as I said, it's not the success of the esports side. Like LCS could have the biggest numbers ever. It could have like 50 million viewers and the teams themselves could be doing an awesome job and the games could be fucking incredible. The World Championship could be the best esports event ever seen and all these factors. Everyone within LCS and LoL esports could be succeeding like crazy. But if Riot, the company, goes totally to shit and all the rest of it and they haven't used other means and made the actual scene sustainable in that sense of sustainability, so it can support itself, so it can be maintained from more than one aspect, so it can endure beyond just one person propping it up. If they haven't put that in place, then it will just fall complete and it will be worse than all these other options given, the open circuits and other games, crowdfunding and other things. It'll be worse in terms of sustainability than all of those options. Now, how do other tournaments work in esports? Because I'm not saying this like Riot are the idiots and they don't know what they're talking about. I'm saying just the way they presented it doesn't make a lot of sense. There's not a lot of sustainability in esports itself. There's very few businesses that make money properly from their like viewers, live audience, whatever, merchandising. There's very few that actually make money and support themselves in that sense. Like most tournaments that you think of circuits, I won't name names, but think of the big circuits within esports who run like a tournament every 2 or 3 months, and maybe there's one in North America, and then someone else runs one in Sweden, and then someone runs one in Germany. The majority of these companies are not making their money from like Twitch ads and all this stuff. That stuff helps. Maybe it helps on the side and plays for this or that and adds a little bit of a budget. The majority of those tournaments make their money from investment money. So what they do is they go to a group of investors and they get millions of dollars and they sell them on the plan that like, listen, one day it's going to be here and here's the metrics of where we'll be next time when we spent the money and this is where we envision the future. And the idea of the investor is he thinks he's getting on the ground floor and it's going to become $1 billion, the next NFL one day. And he got in now relatively cheap to where that is now. But to us, it seems like, wow, you're putting in millions of dollars, like you won't make anything back. So they put in the millions of dollars like that. And as a result, they can run their tournament circuits. They get sponsors as well. And they have this huge circuit. We know what esports circuit is like. Now, the problem with that method is next time you go back to the set of investors, if you say to them, right, well, I need my next round of money and here are the metrics and like, could I have it please? If they just say, no, like I don't, the metrics aren't good enough or I just don't want to be involved anymore, then either you have to find another investor to put millions into your thing or it's done. Like literally no matter what the level of success of the game is and all that, and even fans or people watching on Twitch without ad block or people even paying it, even if they have a subscription they pay, your whole tournament, your whole circuit, your whole company could just be done overnight if you can't then find the next million of investment money. So that is entirely not sustainable. That's ridiculous in terms of sustainability. Now then, here's the reason why I'm going to bring this up at the end. just to give an example of where I actually think in general, if you watch this video, if I was a Riot person, I'd just stop using the word sustainability, because clearly it's been misapplied before in terms of your own scenarios when it wasn't sustainable. You've misapplied it in terms of other situations which actually are more sustainable options, but you're labeling that as not sustainable, insustainable. Instead, unsustainable, I guess is the word. Instead, you get a scenario where there was a real, to some degree, sustainable business model that existed in League of Legends esports that Riot themselves shut down. So OGN on GameNet, the ones who do on OGN Champions, now it's called LCK, the Korean league in League of Legends. Remember, if you wanted the English language stream, you paid money. I think it was like, what, $8 a month or something. And you got the live stream with Monty and Doa, and they could afford to pay them a full salary and live in Korea. And you got all the VODs, 400 VODs of great casted English language League of Legends going back years and years. Now this approach, yeah, you had to pay $8, but as a result, as long as it was a successful product that could make people pay $8, which it did, a lot of people paid, it was making, I mean, I don't know the numbers, but let's just say all I can see on here is a lot of money, and I would speculate just as an outsider, millions, making millions of dollars a year. So this amount of money that this service, the subscription service, was making was a way to get millions of dollars into the on-GameNet coffers, and then they could pay for more things, Monty and Doa to live there. Maybe they could pay for extra things for when they do the Worlds cover, whatever it would be. They could pay for all these things with that money. And it was a way to get the fan base to sort of crowdfund in a different way. Crowdfunding is essentially, if you do it the right way, just giving someone a product, but then a side effect of that product, which they are aware of and why they also might buy the product, is that it goes into the esports side and gives you, so everyone gains something, and it's very upfront, and you get a degree of control if you're the consumer. You can contribute to what you want to see go. So this existed in this, but Riot came in and they decided, right, we're going to take over that. It's going to be free now, and presumably they pay some of the money, or there's some sort of arrangement there in terms of, well, you'll be on our Twitch channel and you'll get a percentage of the money there. Whatever the situation is, that's actually an area where they've gone against what would be the sustainable option, which was already what existed and what had actually been proven and was growing year on year and was getting great numbers and was allowing it to be maintained, supporting itself, and ensuring it would endure. Those things have been taken away. The sustainability has been taken out of that situation. And now, again, just like a lot of other areas, LCK now, to a degree, presumably, is hoping that Big Daddy Warbucks Riot keeps paying out that money. And if he ever, I'm a bit short on cash flow this month, well, then they're fucked, aren't they? So this is an interesting topic overall, because you'll hear this word used everywhere by all sorts of people at different levels of the hierarchy within esports, and yet so few people ever sit down and really look at, like, is esports in general sustainable? Where is the sustainability from companies here? What are the most sustainable options? And who's winning? Who's creating sustainable alternatives? This guy might have the best tournament and might have the most viewers, but is what he's doing the most sustainable? This guy over here might have a very meager thing, and they might just be building it year on year, and they might have a small thing where fans are involved and there's crowdfunding and whatever, and his numbers might not look so crazy, but he might be the sustainable one. Remember, that's the whole thing that was initially stressed about. It doesn't matter if TI4 has the most money, is it sustainable? Well, let's use that whole model, and let's look at even at League of Legends, and let's look at all esports like that. And so if anyone has any actual insight into that, if anyone wants to study this, I'd be very interested to know how it works, because I'm not an economics major, as you've probably guessed, but from the little I can tell, there's a lot of confusion here, and some of it's just like people being a bit dishonest, and I think playing political games with words, with buzzwords that people vaguely know what it means, but it's not being applied the way that actually strictly it probably should.